Right. I think the workshop's been really interesting. It's amazing the talent that is sitting in that room. In fact, it's a little for us coming over from Europe, from London. It's people who've written the books, so it's pretty awe-inspiring. It's great. I really got involved with this through the Prince of Wales Accounting for Sustainability project, and I chair the executive board there. And we've been working on two main themes over the last 5 years. One is around embedding sustainability into the decision-making processes of companies, organisations. And the second is around what we call the connected reporting framework. And the connected reporting framework is effectively integrated reporting. But we came up with a concept of how it could be implemented, and have some very major corporates who've been using it, like Aviva and HSBC and EDF Energy and various groups like that. And then the integrated reporting has really come on the back of that. I'm sort of the chairman of the project rather than involved in the nitty-gritty, so I'm not. The team have been fantastic making it all happen. But I think the interesting aspect that we've seen is that the companies are really wanting to understand and to engage in the whole process. And one of the things that's been really interesting is that the connected reporting framework, which we devised, is very flexible. And if you looked at the reports of the different companies, you wouldn't necessarily think that they were using the same framework. We sort of created a potential framework that they might want to look like, to model it. But actually many of them have done it completely differently, but with the same principles and coming up with the same answers, just looks different. And it's been really interesting exercise on that basis. I talked this morning in the session around the various challenges that we face, the various things we've got to deal with. The core being that that reporting has to be based on the strategy of the business. I won't go through the whole presentation this morning, but I think one of the key elements that we've got to try and address is flexibility. If we follow the financial reporting model, we will end up with checklists and data that is really, I think somebody said it in the session earlier today, that what they're coming up with is stuff that really isn't material or interesting. It's just that it has to be reported. What we've got to do is make sure that companies have the freedom, organisations have the freedom to report on their performance. It's difficult in a litigious world that we live in. It's very difficult, but we've got to try and give them the space to be able to do that, rather than, this is my view, rather than trying to say, right, you put that figure in this box and that number in that box and that's how that links to that. Rather set up some ideas that gives them a true framework rather than a fixed model. If anybody's interested, we had a series of academics, well-known academics, do a book on the case, not Harvard academics, I'm afraid, but nonetheless do a book on, they went in and they did a case study on, I think it's 8 organisations that had used the connected reporting framework. And it was really interesting, the feedback that came out of that. And all of them, it was incredibly beneficial. Whether, interestingly, it wasn't always the same thing that was beneficial. So, for example, just to give you a couple of examples, in one of the companies, these are all very large global companies. In one of the companies, the corporate responsibility reporting team had never met the financial reporting team. Didn't know who they were, didn't know which part of the building they were in, because one did a set of reports here and another did a set of reports there, and never the twain shall meet. And of course that was ridiculous, but it wasn't understood that that's actually what was happening. And of course with an integrated report, you just can't do that. So that's an example. I'm just trying to think of another classic example would be companies actually engaging at the board level with sustainability because you can't discuss integrated reporting or connected reporting without including things outside of the financials. And it gave the boards, I'm sure boards were discussing such things before, but they didn't have data and principles that they had to agree to, and therefore it came up onto the board agenda, which I think was very beneficial. But there's a book that one can get on the case studies that Accounting Sustainability did, which was released earlier this year. Just to get out there is that I'm co-chairing the working group of the IARC, International Integrated Reporting Committee. In fact, we've just had somebody come in from a media organisation to help us with communications and things. And the first thing they said, which we all knew, is it's a rubbish title. Besides that, because it just doesn't flow, IARC, it just doesn't work. But anyway, it's where we are. And I think the key messages that I would really put out there is that what we are trying very, very hard to do is not just develop a framework for integrated reporting, but to make sure that there is convergence, and that all the really good initiatives that are out there are not superseded by IARC, quite the contrary, but let the IARC embrace them, so that all the work they've been doing can continue to be done, but with everybody understanding the whole thing together. How it's all going to fit together is going to be interesting. But IARC is not a new organisation that is taking over the world of integrated reporting. It is there to make sure that all these wonderful initiatives that are going on actually get somewhere, and bring them all together. And that is the key message that I would have. And I suppose secondly is that we have set this false but nonetheless set deadline of getting the world's governments to give us some authority at the G20 in France in 2011. So it's just over a year, which is it will give the credibility to integrated reporting. And we won't have all the answers by then, but we'll have a good understanding of what needs to be done. And if we can achieve that deadline with the help of all these excellent initiatives and investors and companies and NGOs and the whole works, then it'll be a big win, because it's one of these things where there is an evolution. If we get the government's buy-in, we can have a step on the evolution. The one step was the one report. Another step was the big round table meeting we had in London last December. But a major step would be G20 endorsement, which would mean that it will happen. And so, it's a big ask, but we'll get there.